Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Carolyn Lucas, Executive Director of the Coalition of Kaiser Permanente unions, off of their very successful strikes. Then Meron Rapoport, editor of Local Call and writer at 972 Magazine, on the state of the Israeli public. Also on the program today, Joe Biden in Israel strikes a deal for humanitarian aid from Egypt. Biden also says U.S. Defense Department data, Israel, according to them, Israel did not bomb that hospital in Gaza, but, I mean,
at least that time.
Mahmoud Abbas, head of the Palestinian Authority, and Abdullah of Jordan cancel the rest of Biden's trip. Meanwhile, at the UN, U.S. vetoes a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in the Security Council. Heading to Capitol Hill, Jim Jordan is taking an interesting tact. He's going to go from losing the vote for Speaker of the House to losing the House, the vote for the Speaker of the House by an even wider margin. At least that's his aspiration. In his speaker attempt, Republicans still can't get it together. Joe Biden to ask Congress for $100 billion in Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan aid. That's a yearly request. Speaking of Ukraine, they've just started using the long-range U.S. missiles provided to them by the U.S. for the first time. Starbucks suing its union over a tweet calling for solidarity with Palestine. And remember Ron DeSantis? Turns out that his big donors, they're tapped out. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Emma is off today. A quick respite from the relentless news. It is, however, Hump Day. Does not feel like we're even remotely close to the end of the week. A lot has happened over the past 24 hours. I should tell you that I interviewed Meron Rapoport yesterday afternoon. Would have been 10 p.m. Israel time. We did not have, and I don't know that we have anything conclusive regarding this hospital attack. Regardless, I don't know how much, other than just a simply like increasing the amount of carnage and who's responsible for it. We know that there have been thousands now killed in the Gaza Strip. The actual numbers, I don't know that we will know for a while. We know that nearly 1,000 of them are children, which is no surprise. 50% of the population there are under the age of 18, out of that 2.1 million folks. Biden, after Blinken had been apparently for 9 hours meeting with essentially the top 5 or 6 people planning the Israeli invasion of Gaza. Meron Rapoport put this in context, and I'll let him discuss it when we get there in the interview. But Biden, it's been reported that Biden sat in also on the war planning. That is not a standard thing. I mean, regardless of the relationship between countries, where the president of one country sits in on essentially the war plans and is that level of briefed on something like this. And interpret it as you will. Rapoport suggested it was, Biden's attempt to sort of rein in the Israelis to the extent that he could. He's announcing here in these 2 clips that there will be humanitarian aid coming in through Egypt. However, it's going to be subject to Hamas not taking that humanitarian aid for themselves. Unclear how you establish that. But nevertheless, here's Joe Biden this morning.
There's innocent families in Gaza as human shields, putting their command centers, their weapons, their communications tunnels in residential areas. Palestinian people are suffering greatly as well. We mourn the loss of innocent Palestinian lives like the entire world. I was outraged and saddened by the enormous loss of life yesterday in the hospital in Gaza. Based on the information we have seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza. The United States unequivocally stands for the protection of civilian life during conflict, and I truly grieve for the families who were killed or wounded by this tragedy. The people of Gaza need food, water, medicine, shelter. Today, I asked the Israeli cabinet, who I met with for some time this morning, to agree to the delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza, based on the understanding that there will be inspections and that the aid should go to civilians, not to Hamas. Israel agreed the humanitarian assistance can begin to move from Egypt to Gaza. But let me be clear, if Hamas diverts or steals the assistance, they will have demonstrated once again that they have no concern for the welfare of the Palestinian people. And it will end. As a practical matter, it will stop the international community from being able to provide this aid.
Putting aside the question of the hospital for the moment. On one hand, we're told this is a war. On the other hand, it's simply terrorist rockets that are being fired. And I accept, for the sake of argument, that Hamas's militancy is terrorism. I mean, there's no doubt the attack on October 7th was terrorism. But we keep slipping, or I don't say we, but there's this sort of slipping in that they're fighting terrorists or they're fighting a war. That they know that Hamas does not care about Palestinian citizens, and this would further be an example of that, or Palestinian citizens are responsible for this. I mean, this is the sort of like, I bring it up only for you to watch in the coverage, watch in the way that the Israeli leadership speaks about it, watch the way that I don't know, whomever speaks about it. This sort of like in one turn of phrase, it's a war between two nations. Of course, Gaza's not a nation, and that's part of the issue. In one instance, it is a terrorist group. And, we've had terrorist groups, cells certainly, and groups arguably in this country. They're in European countries. We would never think. And almost definitionally, they're using human shields, whatever that means. Like, it's not like they're sitting on their military bases. Terrorist groups in France aren't sitting on military bases. They're living in apartment buildings. And so, just watch the way that language sort of shifts and slides back and forth. Hopefully some of this aid will get to people. I don't know how they're going to provide aid without a ceasefire in any meaningful way. There is a way to make sure that Hamas does not divert this aid. There is a way to make sure that Hamas does not steal this aid. And that is have a ceasefire and send some type of third party in to provide this aid. That's the way to do it. You can't both say Hamas is going to prove that they don't care about the Palestinian people, and the way that we're going to respond to that is by showing less care for the Palestinian people. Here is, let's play these MSNBC clips. I can't even begin to. Joe Biden addressed the hospital thing, and it's supposedly in one question he said it was from Defense Department data. He refers to it saying that it's from the other team, which, Joe Biden's always said stupid things or things in a stupid way. But it turns out not so much of a game. So it's not really teams. Here is an MSNBC reporter.
This is an absolutely classic fog of war situation, and we should be really clear. NBC News is not able to get into Gaza right now. The Israeli border is sealed. The Egyptian border is sealed. Our teams are not able to get there and to verify this directly. We should also say that the Israeli military at this point is not providing any evidence to back up its claims that this was a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket. They are citing intelligence that they have not yet made public. We should also say that this kind of death toll is not what you normally associate with Palestinian rockets. These rockets are dangerous. They are deadly. They do not tend to kill hundreds of people in a single strike. In the way.
And I should say, someone's IMing me in all caps. Don't do that. That Biden's getting his info from the hospital from the Israeli military. He claims in a question that it was from Defense Department data. That's what he claimed. We should also say that, most of the experts that I've read agreed with this assessment by the MSN or by the NBC reporter that Hamas does not generally have armaments that could kill 500 people. That report was from Israel at 11:15 at night. In the light of day, the images that are coming out, to the extent that, and again, I have no way of assessing this. I'm just telling you what I've read, and from what I've read from people who are in, that I generally have some faith in their reporting and analysis, that in the light of day, the size of the crater was rather small relative to what Israel generally bombs with. And that the speculation that I have seen, and again, there's no way to ultimately know this, is that it was a rocket that broke in half, and one part fell one place, the engine fell one place, and the warhead hit these cars outside the hospital. They also say that it's that from the look of that, because the hospital was in fact not leveled, thank God, that it's unlikely there were actually that many people killed. And it was rather quick that we got the numbers, but I don't know. I also know that the Israeli government has lied on, I don't want to say countless, but pretty close.
Well, on this, they had to delete a video last night.
Well, they deleted a video last night, but I'm talking about like with the reporter, the AJA reporter that the Al Jazeera reporter that they killed, and blamed for a year on Palestinians. Doctors Without Borders have said repeatedly, this is not a political organization. They just send doctors. that Israel targets healthcare facilities to send a message to Gazans. In 2021, Israel destroyed 15 ambulances and 9 health institutions in Gaza. Remember this, including the only lab that could do COVID-19 testing. So there's a lot of reason to be skeptical of anything the IDF says in these situations.
I mean, because hospitals have been hit in this conflict, including this
well,
one.
Well, they specifically said to empty out the hospitals.
Right.
So, but regardless, you had a lot more people in that hospital because they had nowhere else to go because of the incessant bombing. And, you know, the bottom line is that there needs to be a ceasefire so that, and it does not appear that Biden was able to sort of get that. And so that's where we're at. Again, we'll talk to Meron Rapoport. If you have watched this program in the past, we've spoken to Meron a couple of times in the past about the protests that were happening around the so-called judiciary reform in Israel. And the last conversation we had with him was the prospect of Israelis understanding that the authoritarianism that they were seeing in their country now was essentially a domestic version of what they've been doing in the West Bank and Gaza and really throughout Israel for, in some instances, decades. And so, but it's an important conversation to have with Meron, and you know, he's it's rough for people on the what remains or is referred to as the Israeli left. You know, there.
Or even just people critical of Netanyahu. Like, we need to be here for those people.
Well, the weird thing is that there is a lot of criticism of Netanyahu, but according to Meron, there isn't criticism over an incursion into Gaza. It is the security failure. It's really interesting because the dynamic is so different than it was in 9/11 relatively, you know, because George W. Bush was, you know, I still have, you know, little action figures. They literally, you know, started making like, you know, kids dolls to play with. They did that for Dennis Miller, for God's sakes. Yes, I said, okay. All right, well, I have some ads to read. I mean, it's uncomfortable to read ads, you know, in these contexts. But I'm, you know, to be honest with you, we're going to have, we're going to be dealing with this for weeks or months, if not more. I mean, and, you know, the conversation we had with Trita Parsi yesterday, we could have that conversation again in a week and track how far things are moving in terms of like this becoming a regional conflict. We're at the very early stages of this, and it's going to be it's really disturbing. And I know a lot of you have been you know, it's helpful to take a mental health break. I don't want to recommend drinking, but I can tell you one of the ways that when I was in Vegas last week, the one thing that I was like absolutely sure to pack was my Z-Biotics. And you can, because they're actually in like a little smaller than 3-ounce bottles. And why? Because first off, I got to do the show at 9 a.m. when I'm in Vegas. That means I'm getting up at like 5 or, you know, like 6, 7, do some research, get into the conference room immediately, have an hour's worth of technical problems, freak out about that, then do the show. And at night, I'm going out and I'm drinking a little bit, having dinner with my friend Scott. He used to produce Ring of Fire, or I used to be on it. He still does. And the way I did that, Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic. It is the first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists who essentially to tackle rough mornings after you drink. And here's how it works. And this was a surprise to me because I always thought it was dehydration that was why you felt so crappy the next day. And there's some of that, but the real reason is that when you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. And it's that byproduct that really makes you feel miserable the next day. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic produces an enzyme which breaks that byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it the most. And just remember, all you got to do is you drink Z-Biotics before drinking alcohol. You drink responsibly, get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow, it's like none of that ever happened. I mean, you still remember it, but it makes a huge difference. It was night and day for me in terms of Las Vegas and being able to do that. And you got Halloween parties coming up, or just if you're like me, maybe you're at night you'll have a drink or two to wind down after an evening, and Z-Biotics beforehand leaves you in a position where you can do stuff the next day. Go to zbiotics.com/majority. Get 15% off your first order when you use majority at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code. You can stay prepared no matter the time or the occasion. Z-Biotics backed with a 100% money back guarantee. If you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/majority. Use the code majority at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for your sponsorship and frankly for your product. You can head to our YouTube or podcast description for a link. Also, I had an interesting experience. I recorded some Bob's Burgers when I was in Vegas. We're not on strike. The SAG-AFTRA is our cartoon contract's different. When the writers thing came in, but I went to a recording studio, and Hello Tushy was there. I went to the bathroom. I couldn't believe it. I was really excited. And if you're not familiar with Hello Tushy, it is a bidet attachment that really fundamentally changes your life. You don't have to go out and spend $4,000 to get a Japanese bidet toilet. I have seen those. I know people have them. And they're crazy. They're amazing. But you can enjoy the fundamental experience. Has 100,000 5-star reviews. And essentially, you can see why millions of people who actually poop love the Hello Tushy bidet. Every Hello Tushy bidet attachment comes with a 30-day risk-free guarantee, a 12-month warranty. It's simple. You sit down, you turn a dial, after you go, and your bum gets washed. Then all you do is you pat yourself clean, and it makes total sense, and you realize, what have I been doing for, I don't know, I guess it was 55 years of my life before I was introduced to this on a regular basis. It is a completely different experience. It's much better. It makes more sense. Your hands are dirty. You don't use a dry towel to wipe them off. It attaches to your existing toilet. This is the amazing thing about it. If you know how to change a toilet seat, you know how to put this on. Super easy. You don't have to put any extra electricity, no additional plumbing. Cuts your toilet paper use by 80%. Hello Tushy bidet pays for itself in under a year. And if we ever, God forbid, have another lockdown situation where there's no more toilet paper, you are in heaven. Stop wiping, start washing. Go to hellotushy.com/majority. Use the promo code majority for 10% off your first order. That's hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. Do yourself a favor too. You get a 30-day risk-free guarantee. Get that 10% off. Buy them for all your toilets because you're gonna want them on all your toilets. Check out our YouTube or podcast description for that link as well. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Caroline Lucas, Executive Director of the Coalition of Kaiser Permanente Unions. Then later in the program, Meron Rapoport, editor of Local Cow and writer at 972 Magazine. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Just an update on the Jim Jordan situation. He has already begun to lose more votes than he had lost in the last round. So he's headed to a defeat, but this time it'll be more humiliating because it's the second bite at the apple. But joining us now, Caroline Lucas. She's Executive Director of the Coalition of Kaiser Permanente Unions in the wake of a strike that took place a couple of weeks ago for 3 days. 75,000 Kaiser Permanente workers in multiple states around the country. And Caroline, it appears that strike was about as successful as you can get. Will you walk us through why you were on strike and how Kaiser Permanente has reacted?
Absolutely, Sam. Thanks for having me on. You know, there were a lot of factors that went into the strike, and I would say that overall, we had a huge turnout for the strike line. We had in most areas between 70 and 90% of frontline healthcare providers who were out on the strike line. And I think the power of that turnout, the level of frustration expressed by folks who were out front of the hospitals, really forced Kaiser executives to finally listen to their workers about the severity of the crisis we've been talking about for over a year.
And so where are we? I'm a little bit confused as to like where we are in the process of the contract, because at one point, there was and maybe this is still active. Basically, the unions have said, we're going to go out again if we can't really wrap this up by November 1st. So give me a sense of where things stand right now.
We are done nationally. So we have successfully concluded bargaining. Last Friday was an amazing day. Around 3 a.m. that morning, we reached tentative agreements on all kinds of topics that were still outstanding. At this point in time, the step that's occurring starting today actually is ratification. That's where our frontline union members vote on our tentative agreements and say, yep, this is what I want in my contract. That process concludes November 3rd, and then we have a 4-year agreement from then on.
And can you give us a sense? I mean, presumably now the membership is looking at the terms of these deals. Can you give us some of the top lines as to what you guys were able to negotiate?
The fight has been around staffing from the beginning. And, you know, we've had members for over a year now asking to be part of a process to figure out long-term solutions around staffing. Staffing continued to be the single biggest priority throughout our negotiations. And now that we're looking at ratifying this contract, as I talk to people who are excited to see a successful conclusion, the biggest thing I hear is I can take a day off. You know, in a couple of months from now, we'll have the staff we need that I can feel good about being on vacation and not have to worry about my coworker pulling doubles to cover my absence. So people, I think, are relieved that Kaiser executives finally listens to their cry for help and that there's a path forward that at the end of this will allow them to have some respite.
I mean, broadening out. I mean, we've followed many nurses strike in particular. We have some in, I think it's in Newark, that are on strike now for like day 75 or 80, somewhere up there. We followed the Worcester nurses strike that went on for hundreds of days, I guess a couple of years ago now. But this question of staffing, does that, how much more does the idea of it being about staffing? Because at that point, there's an analog, it seems to me, when teachers go on strike, and part of the things that they're fighting for are better facilities for the kids, for their students, improving the sort of the people that they're working with and for, in a way. I wonder how much that animates the sort of the solidarity and the determination of people who are going on strike when they know, because, you know, they get a day off, but they also know that part of the problem is that they're not capable of giving the same level of care to people on that second or third or fourth shift that they're pulling in a row.
That is 100% it. And I think the commonality between teachers and frontline healthcare providers really is a profession about caring. It really is a teamwork profession. And the folks who are drawn to that kind of work are really people who are used to advocating and doing things for other people and with other people. And I think that that means that things like patient care or student needs resonate in a really personal way for these folks. And so the idea of seeing patients suffering, and to your point of not just our members have been pulling doubles and working, 10, 20 hours a week of overtime. But the other part of that is folks on the lower paid end of the spectrum are frequently working second and third jobs as well. So not only are they working for Kaiser Permanente and trying to show up to do the best possible job they can there for patients, a lot of times they're going home, they're doing Lyft, they're doing Uber, they're working at Target night shift, right, to make ends meet. A lot of folks, we're in very high cost of living markets where Kaiser Permanente is. A lot of folks are also living several hours away from their Kaiser facility they work in. And so between a 1, 2, 3 hour commute every day and a second job and overtime at Kaiser, a lot of folks told us stories about literally sleeping for 3 hours between jobs in Kaiser parking lots. And so the exhaustion that creates for months on end, it's really, I can't imagine the impact mentally and physically that has on folks. And so to then be able to show up to give their best care, their best selves at work, it's traumatizing.
Going back a little bit in the history of like what led us to this point in terms of this contract, this was actually 2 weeks ago was the second strike in the past year. Is that not right? Do I have that correct?
We picketed in July. So there was a picket that we engaged in July. Kaiser Permanente has seen an uptick in strikes from other unions within Kaiser at previous points in their negotiations. So you might be thinking of a year ago, there was an open-ended strike of their engineers. 6 months before that, their mental health providers went on strike for 9 weeks. So Kaiser overall as an organization has seen an uptick in strikes. This was our first time striking in 25 years at Kaiser.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I just like when I see like a 3-day strike and they basically come to the table and offer everything that they are. I mean, is there a sense, do you have a sense that like management is, I mean, I don't want you to speak for other unions or other just, sort of broadly across these things, but there just seems to be that management across different industries seems to be completely blindsided by the discontent of their workers and even more, I think, to the point, the solidarity that's grown amongst their workers. I mean, it feels like I saw that in the writers' strike. I'm seeing that, like, even with the producers are just assuming that the actors are going to come back in. The car CEOs are out there now, basically begging, please let the strike end. Like they didn't, like it's somehow unfair, or they didn't know, or I mean, what's going on in from your perspective?
Sam, it's so fascinating. I think those of us who live in real life have friends and family who are struggling, who, have done everything right, went to school for a degree we told them was valuable, like a healthcare degree, are working full time and can't pay their bills. And that kind of anxiety, in the sense that I've done everything right, and if one thing goes wrong, I'm homeless. I lose my car. I can't pay for my kids, after school activities. I think that folks who are executives who are running these companies are just so out of touch with that level of fear in the working class in America right now, that there is no safety net anymore. There is no margin for error. And that every year, despite working really, really hard, they're falling farther behind. And I know that my friends and family, that the frontline healthcare providers I talk with, viscerally feel that every day. And I think that creates a kind of solidarity and camaraderie with folks who are in that same boat with them. And it creates this fundamental disconnect between them and the folks that they see making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year off of their labor.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch. Well, congratulations on a successful strike. We'll find out about the ratification, I guess, in the next couple of days. Caroline Lucas, Executive Director of the Coalition of Kaiser Permanente Unions. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. What a pleasure.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, a pre-recorded interview I did with Meron Rapoport from yesterday. And, we try and cite a couple of times that we're doing the interview. Then obviously information is coming through, and it's rather quick and hard to, things are moving pretty fast. But the public opinion, I think that Meron refers to, I think is the same in Israel, obviously, in the past 24 hours. Just one other point I wanted to make about what Caroline said in terms of this dynamic where management executives are so out of touch with what's going on. Not that we're, short on supply of doom and gloom these days, but I think it was Jared Diamond. I cannot remember. A Collapse, I think, is the name of his book.
Oh, yeah.
If I remember, and I think I interviewed him 10, 15 years ago on that book. The one thing I do remember him saying specifically was that societies begin to sort of disintegrate when the essentially the leadership of a society, the elite, if you will, defined by really generally the richest or the most politically powerful, are living in gated communities, not necessarily literal ones, but metaphorical ones where they have no idea what's going on in the real world. And, when you see the CEO of Ford come out and say, please, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?
It's crazy. We have profiteers in front of hospitals. We had two nurses from New Brunswick, Aaron and Sophia, we were on strike on the 75th day yesterday. And you're negotiating with business school people who are psychopaths. So you come to them and you say, yeah, actually the evidence-based, there are studies on this. We need a certain level of staffing to make sure people don't start dying. And they put it in as a guideline. But the guideline has an asterisk to say, if any of you call out sick, sorry, I guess we just can't do safe staffing. I guess people who go to that hospital have to be more at risk of dying.
The idea of private equity owning all of this stuff
crazy
is really problematic. It's the same reason why privatizing government services doesn't work, because all of a sudden job number one isn't the actual job. Job number one is profits. Yep. And then subsidiary to that. And I think if you are older than, 12, I'll even say 17 for some of folks, that making profits is not an incentive for everybody to do the best job possible. It doesn't work that way in the real world.
But people will just choose the different hospital if they get infected.
Exactly.
Because they're changing their
But it's also look, anybody who spent any time, in business, yes, there are still sort of companies that go the most important thing is that we service the customer and we take care of our community, and we take care of our workers. That's what the values this company has had for 75 years, since my great grandfather started this business. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, great.
But in the real world, what happens is we need profits. And we're going to take profits, and you say we need to provide this for our patients or our customers or the community. And we say, we actually think you can do 15, 20% less, because we're going to take that 15, 20% and we're going to get it taxed at a lower capital gains tax. And that's what we're here for.
I'm going to buy a BMW.
Exactly. Well, I think it's Bugatti.
I don't know who I do in Bugattis, but definitely maybe a Porsche.
Yeah. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Meron Rapoport, editor of Local Call and writer at 972 Magazine. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. I want to welcome back to the program Meron Rapoport. He is editor of Local Call and writer at 972 plus 972 Magazine. Meron, welcome back to the program.
Welcome. Happy to be here.
You and I have talked a few times over the past, 6-8 months about the huge protest movement that we had seen from the Israeli population against so-called judicial reforms that the Netanyahu government were proposing, and in some instances actually carried through, at least to some extent. And the dynamic and the question that we were asking was, would there be a connection in the minds of many of these protesters between the authoritarianism that they were protesting that was happening domestically and that which has been practiced against essentially the Palestinian people for decades, and could that coalesce? In the meantime, of course, 2 weeks ago now, and I should say we're recording this on Tuesday, October 17th. There's a lot of news that is happening just now. So I want to make sure that people understand that, we're still sort of filtering information. But you wrote a piece on the 9th entitled "The End of the Netanyahu Doctrine." And I want to talk about that first before we talk about what's going on. And that being, from my understanding, at least in terms of like my Jewish education as a child, having this education in the 70s, with Hebrew school teachers who, had tattoos on their arms, having come from the Holocaust, where the Holocaust and Israel were really the two prominent things that we learned about in Hebrew school at that time, and then Hebrew and then Jewish culture. But the relationship between the Holocaust and Israel was inextricable. I mean, in particularly, obviously now, but then, we're only 30 years out. It's actually longer from the time that I learned about these things than it was then from the Holocaust. And the premise of Israel always was a place for Jews to be safe and have security. And in many respects, that was punctured 10 days ago now. And your piece looks at the aside, like beyond the moral questions, but the simple practical question of, has the Netanyahu doctrine, which in many ways he inherited from others, Sharon and perhaps some before him, has that fundamentally failed, and is there an awareness of that failure? Fill in the gaps there.
There are many issues here. It's really this attack, terrible and really despicable attack by Hamas last Saturday morning on kibbutzim and settlements around Gaza and small cities around Gaza on the Israeli side, was a watershed really that is still in the making, and we are still seeing its effect. Yes, it even touched, as you said, something that I don't think I referred to so much in my piece, yes, Israel was founded, the goal of Zionism, not just Israel, the goal of Zionism was to give Jews a safe haven in which they will be free from attacks for being Jews. That was the idea, the fundamental idea of Zionism. That's the idea behind the foundation of Israel. And if 75 years after the establishment of the State of Israel, this cannot be secured, and Israel has become, in one day, the most dangerous place for Jews around the world, where the Holocaust, the Israeli government is saying that was like a Holocaust. This is a very dangerous conception to play with, because, okay, you say this is like the Holocaust, but and this gains you support internationally, even internally, but certainly internationally. But what does it mean? It means that Israel, that was built in order to prevent another Holocaust, is experiencing a Holocaust itself. So this is really fundamental. I don't think I really went into it in my piece. But yes, I think two not conflicting doctrine that Netanyahu, yes, some of them he inherited from his previous prime ministers. Some of them were his own. Two doctrine really fell apart. The one doctrine is, the first doctrine is that Hamas is beneficial. The fact that Hamas continues to govern Gaza is beneficial to Israel, because as Hamas is governing Gaza first, the international community will never accept Hamas. So Israel can always say, we have nobody to negotiate with because this is a murderous organization, even before the brutal and murderous attack of last Saturday. And secondly, it will jeopardize any attempt by the Palestinian Authority, by the PLO, by Abu Mazen, to negotiate any peace agreement, because he will be looked at as one who does not represent the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people is divided between one government in Gaza and one government in Ramallah. And this, for Netanyahu, was really, yes, in a way inherited, but you have to remember that the coup in which Hamas took power in Gaza was in 2007, and Netanyahu returned to government in 2009. So most of his time since 2009, last 14 years, in which he was almost uninterrupted as prime minister, was with Hamas governing Gaza. And he really, and he said it, it's not something that was hidden. He said that this is an interest for Israel, because it will make the demand for a Palestinian state impossible. So that's one doctrine. And that in order to tame Hamas, what we need is, yes, Hamas is of course an enemy, but if we will let it be on the one hand, and even give it money, allow Qatar to deliver money and things like that, then It is a small organization. It cannot really do too much harm to Israel. Or we will build a huge fence that it will not be able to cross. And if they do problems, we will bomb them, and everything will be fine, and we will benefit. There will be relative quiet in Israel and no potential of Palestinian state on the other. This collapsed when this fence or wall collapsed in a way that nobody really understand how it came about, but it happened. It happened, and it was the fence was toppled down, I think, in more than almost 30 places around this fence that is only 60 kilometers long, and thousands of Palestinians entered Israel. So this doctrine fell apart at the moment. Thousands of Palestinians crossed the border, and of course what they did later. And as the doctrine said, okay, we don't need army because we have a fence. The army was in the West Bank, so the people, the civilian, were really left alone to be massacred by Hamas. The second doctrine that fell apart was the doctrine that is more unique to Netanyahu, which says, Israel, in order to prosper, contrary to what Labour government did, that in order to secure the future of Israel, we need to solve, in this way or the other, the Palestinian issue. Netanyahu said no. Palestinian issue is not relevant to the prosperity and well-being of Israel. We could bypass Ramallah. The last thing that, just a few days before the attack, the Hamas attack, somebody said that when there was a talk about the negotiation with Saudi Arabia, and the Palestinians said they want some benefits, political benefits from this agreement. Someone was quoted from the Israeli government, we will not let the mayor of Ramallah to interfere. That's how they referred to Abu Mazen, the Palestinian president. So the idea of Netanyahu was, we can bypass Ramallah. We can have peace with the Arab world, Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, Morocco, and now, of course, there were this negotiation with Saudi Arabia. And we will have peace with all these Arab countries that need us, Israel, because we are strong militarily, we are strong economically, and we are strong politically. We have political leverage, especially in the US. They need us. They will do peace with us. And this way we will make even peace with Palestinians, but this is not really important. They don't have a veto power. The moment the thousands of Palestinians crossed this fence, it was clear message that the conflict is here. The conflict is between Israelis and Palestinians, between Jews and Palestinians living in this land, not in Saudi Arabia, not in the Emirates, not in Bahrain. Our war is not our conflict is not with Saudis. Our conflict is not with Emiratis. Our conflict is with the Palestinian. And this is a moment of truth for the Israelis.
How and we should say, I mean, this concept, I mean, it's arguably about sequencing, but it really is essentially the Netanyahu government saying, we have taken care of this. And I guess I've described it as the appetite, if you will, or the confidence that Israel had the resources to suppress the Palestinian people in this way, so that it was not a urgent issue, but rather one that, we'll deal with down the road, and we're just going to move forward. And this is going to be something like I don't know, the way that some other country might deal with some other, non-urgent but somewhat problematic issue. It falls apart. How has the Israeli people responded to this? I mean, obviously, aside from the shock and the sadness and the horror of the attack, has the Israeli people, I should say the Jewish Israelis, have they begun to sort of absorb this in a political manner, or have they said we're going to first deal with the security issue? Like, where are we relative to the protests that we were, several months ago?
The protest I will go to in a minute. I think what happened, and I think I describe it in my article, and unfortunately, it is coming. We are seeing the after effect. The fact that Israelis did realize, maybe even without saying it, but did realize that the whole doctrine of Netanyahu, certainly the doctrine of encouraging Hamas and letting Hamas govern Gaza, this is widespread understanding that it was a terrible failure. But also that the dream of making peace with Saudi Arabia as a way to solve the issue with the Palestinian is also shattered. This is widespread. The second less the first, but still widespread. But the outcome does not, for the moment, is not that, okay, if our conflict is with the Palestinian, let's go and make peace with them. I think the outcome at the moment, at least regarding Gaza, because West Bank and even Palestinian inside Israel is something else. But regarding Gaza, I think the outcome is that most Israelis, and even a good friend of mine in what is called the left, or used to be called the left, saying, okay, if our conflict is with these Palestinians from Gaza, and what they do is massacre us, then we don't have any, the only way we could deal with it is massacre them. Wipe out Hamas, wipe out Gaza, maybe push hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of Gaza into Sinai, making a new Nakba, and even, people would easily, a columnist, commentator in the Israeli national TV, wrote in his tweet, in his personal account, but still he is the military commentator of the national TV. He said that if 1 million Palestinians should be killed in order to restore a quiet for the Israeli villages around Gaza, so that will be the price, 1 million Palestinian killed. This is, touching with genocide. So I'm not saying all Israelis are there, but unfortunately many are at least in saying, well, let's wipe out Gaza, they deserve it, they supported this massacre done by Hamas, they supported the killing of civilians and rape of women and burning whole families alive, and they supported it. They voted for Hamas, although it's not really correct because they didn't really vote for Hamas. Hamas made a coup, but anyhow, they voted for Hamas. This is how it is conceived in Israel. So they are responsible. So there's no way that what what they learn from the fact that Palestinians are here and are conflicted with the Palestinian is, let's get rid of them.
And what is their perspective towards Netanyahu? I mean, to the extent that you can obviously sense the broad mood, and I mean, I've heard other reports that confirm, your sense of where the Israeli population is. Does that necessarily mean that they continue to subscribe to Netanyahu's sort of twin principles, as it were? I mean, obviously now you can't ignore if they are saying we must, seek revenge and essentially wipe out then obviously they're not, subscribing to the idea that we can overlook this. But have they, what's their perspective, I guess, on Netanyahu?
Netanyahu position seems very, very, very weak. There was a poll in which last Friday, in which his party, Likud party, fell from 33 or 32 seats now to 19, meaning losing more than a third of its power. The coalition went down from 64 seats. That's a small majority, but still a majority in the 120 seats Knesset parliament. They went down from 64 to 42. That was never witnessed in Israeli political history, such in less than a year. But it's not only the polls. You can see it. Ministers of his government are chased away wherever they come. When they come to hospitals, when they come to bereaved families, when they are chased away, time after time. Yesterday, for example, the culture minister, Miki Zohar, said, he was asked, did he went to give his condolences to bereaved families, and he said, I'm not going unless I know I'm wanted. And then he was asked, so are you wanted? Did you go to any family? He said no. So that means out of the 600 to 700 funerals that were already, people that were declared dead, people that were, their corpses were not identified, out of the 6, no one was ready to accept a minister from the Likud. No one. So the situation and referring to the first doctrine, the doctrine of let's live with Hamas, because preventing Hamas, the core, the prime goal is to keep Hamas because it prevents a Palestinian state. Israeli public will not accept any situation in which this war ends and there is a Hamas government in Gaza. It will not accept. If something like this happens, I'm not exaggerating, the Israeli tanks will leave Gaza and go to Jerusalem. They will go to Jerusalem to topple Netanyahu. If something like this happened, if after the war, even if 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 Palestinians are killed, but still Hamas will be, the government of Gaza will be in the hands of Hamas, it will be the end of Netanyahu, and maybe a brutal end. Now, this does not mean that they go to the other part of the equation saying, okay, if there's no Hamas government in Gaza, let's bring the PA to Gaza and start negotiating a two-state solution. No, we are not there. We are very far from this, very far. Now, only rage, hate, and really feeling of revenge is pushing the people. But
So
the doctrine of keeping Hamas in power cannot return. President
Biden, we're speaking on Tuesday. President Biden is scheduled to go to Israel tomorrow. The commentary here about that was that this was a way in which to forestall the invasion of Gaza. The idea being that Israel would not invade Gaza while Biden was in country, and perhaps not while he was in the region. And the idea being that they would secure humanitarian relief for Palestinians in Gaza. And I think there was some hope. Certainly, I felt that earlier today, that maybe with every hour, day delay, it lessened the chances of an incursion into Gaza, and which I think, by all accounts, it's unreasonable to believe it won't lead to a massive number of civilian casualties. With that said, just before we began this interview, maybe hours ago, there is a report, and I think it's confirmed that something hit one of the last functioning hospitals in Gaza City. It was the Baptist hospital, a missile. I've seen conflicting reports as to, was this an Israeli missile? Was it a Hamas missile that misfired? At the end of the day, we've seen Israel say, we're going to hit the hospitals. We're going to hit this area. We know that there's been bombing in the south, presumably where Palestinians would be safe from, according to what they were told by Israel. So, but this is regardless of, and I don't know if we can ever, fully know where this missile comes from, because of the nature of the propaganda that will come out of all sides, and the nature of war. But what does this? Are there any? Is it unreasonable for someone like myself to be sitting here thinking there's a chance that Israel will not invade Gaza, because if Netanyahu knows that he is blamed for this incursion by Hamas, and he knows that the Israeli populace overwhelmingly, has this intense desire for, call it revenge, or call it, eliminating Hamas at any price. It doesn't seem to me that he is politically incentivized at all to do anything except for to provide that, that attack on Hamas. And then it really becomes a question of is that even possible? I mean, Hamas leaders are in Turkey. They're in I imagine half a dozen other countries around the world. But what's your sense of both those things?
As you said, yes, just an hour before we recorded, 2 hours, there was a report that an hospital, the Baptist hospital in the old part of Gaza, was hit, and reports are talking about between 200 to 500 people being killed. And as I talk now, there were reports that thousands of Palestinians are marching on the Mukata, in Ramallah, on the president palace in Ramallah, demanding the resignation of Abu Mazen. So it could be a turning point. And tomorrow, when this will be, it will be today, Biden is arriving. Certainly, it does not seem, it didn't seem possible that Israel will go into ground offensive before Biden leaves the area. He's coming to Israel, then he goes to Amman, and I think other places in the Middle East. So as long as Biden is in the Middle East, I don't see ground offensive. The ground offensive, and to a certain extent, I think the American involvement that we have not witnessed before. Blinken participated, Secretary Blinken participated yesterday in a meeting of the War Cabinet. Actually, it's an American official, he's not an Israeli official, and he participated in the War Cabinet. And 5 people are there, and Blinken. And Biden will attend this cabinet tomorrow. America is involved in a way that was never before. Even in the 73 war, the Yom Kippur War, America did send aid, military aid, during the war. It didn't send aircrafts to the region. And we are talking about not 2 armies attacking Israel like in 73, not the Egyptian and Syrian army using Soviet weapons, just 1,000 militants holding Kalashnikov and RPGs. This American involvement, I think, means, first of all, that I think Biden and the American administration do not think that Israel can handle this conflict alone. America has lost confidence in the ability of the Netanyahu government to handle this conflict. It takes the conflict out of the hands of Israel. This is something really unprecedented.
And do you think the nature of that lack of confidence
will prevent a ground offensive? I don't know. I think some kind of ground offensive will come. It could be more like what happened in Lebanon, meaning that Israel will take strategic zones in the Gaza Strip without really taking over Gaza City with 100, more than 1 million people living in it, and the whole complication of, yes, hundreds of thousands left, but still hundreds of thousands stayed. So, but maybe Biden is aiming for something else. I don't know. Maybe Biden is aiming really to get the Arab world with the PA to Gaza. Maybe that's the arrangement that Biden is pushing for. This will be very hard to swallow for Netanyahu, almost impossible, because it's all his heritage will be shattered. For Gantz, the head of changed the name of which parties, I don't remember, but now he's in the war cabinet, in the emergency cabinet. For Gantz, it's less of a problem to accept the PA back in Gaza. Will Hamas accept it? Will the PA accept to be who will guarantee Israel? International force? I don't think Biden is coming only for photo op. That's my understanding. But again, I think things are evolving, and if this attack on the hospital will be confirmed that it is Israeli, as the Palestinians are sure for the moment. Maybe the Israelis say, they don't say it's Palestinian, they say they're not sure. If it will be confirmed that this was an Israeli attack, I think it could change the course of things. It will maybe remind what happened in Lebanon in '96, I think, when there was an attack by Israel, and then in Cana they hit a shelter where hundreds of Lebanese took refuge, and the attack stopped the next day. So I think Biden is risking, US is risking, if it will let Israel go its way, is risking its position in the Middle East. I'm not sure. We're not talking only about Hezbollah in Lebanon. We're talking about Jordan, with 6 or 7 million Palestinians living in Jordan that will not accept massacre of Palestinians on a large scale in Gaza. We are talking about Egypt. America might risk, and I think this is why Biden is coming, because what he wants is a coalition against Iran, and Iran is a proxy of Russia and maybe of China. He wants a coalition against Iran. If his coalition will be in danger because of Israeli invasion to Gaza, then I think this is American interest to stop the Israeli offensive in order not to put in danger the American interest in the region.
It's fascinating. I don't know that it really has been reported, or at least at the very least, it has not been highlighted that Blinken sat in on that war council, and in the way that you're characterizing it. I don't think that it. I suspect that it's been reported, but not necessarily contextualized. And I think the same with Biden's trip, and certainly there doesn't seem to be a narrative in this country that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your analysis is that America doesn't trust Israel to respond to this in a way that is measured or that maintains stability, because there's a real danger of this escalating beyond this conflict, even beyond Israel and Hezbollah.
And maintaining American interest. Maintaining American interest in the region, not jeopardizing American interest in the region.
My sense has always been, up until George W. Bush, that the United States played a role in which, and sometimes it was attempting to be an honest broker between different parties, but it played a backdoor role where it was basically. It would get the Israeli government to tap on the brakes, and was used by the Israeli government as a way of saying to the desire of the population for some type of retribution or attack or violence or aggressiveness. It's the United States that is essentially inhibiting us, because at the end of the day, if we need weapons, that's where we're getting them. Do you see this as a return to that role?
Yes, but even in a more forceful way, because Israel is so weak now. This leads to demonstrations. The Israeli government is very weak. Netanyahu is extremely weak, and his government is extremely weak. So I think the Americans are acting even before Israel started the ground offense, the ground attack. And this is something I think unprecedented, that the Americans are already in the planning of the attack, not just, watching, encouraging Israel to react, but then taming Israel, playing this game. No, now they are in the decision, in the room where the war decisions are being taken. And this, yes, on the one hand, of course, gives a lot of, Israel has America at its back. So it's, a very good feeling for Israelis. At the same time, as I told you, I think Israeli, they are not sure that Netanyahu government can keep the American interest in the region, because an all-out attack on Gaza could not only drag Hezbollah in, but could really undermine a Western-leaning regime in the region, like Jordan, like Egypt, like even maybe Saudi Arabia. They could be in real trouble if a real large-scale massacres take place in Gaza. I really don't know. I really don't know. It's and Biden, I think, understand it, because you have to understand something I wrote. Israel was never an asset for the US. It was always a liability in the region. It was not an asset. When the Americans went to the first Gulf War, they had to silence Israel. When they went to the second Gulf War, they had to silence Israel. Every time the Americans are really decide to act military in the region, what they need from Israel is to be silenced, not to help them, but to be silenced. So Israel is a liability, it's not an asset. It's not an asset at all.
There's been no...
Today is jeopardizing American interests in the region. The coalition they want to make against Iran, Israel is a liability in building this coalition. It's not helping, contrary to what Israel is always claiming, but I think it's just not true.
Meron Rapoport, thank you for staying with us. I know that you got to get out and do some coverage of some protests or protest yourself. Editor of the local call and writer at Plus 972 magazine. Love to be able to check back within the next days or weeks that are coming, and I hope that you stay safe. And I'm sorry that all of this is happening.
These are really terrible days. These are the worst days that I experienced in my life. I've never experienced something like it.
Well,
the worst.
My heart goes out to you and all the people involved in this conflict, and just the incredible amount of death, and hopefully some of which can be avoided. But thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
We are back. Went a little long today, obviously. That interview with Meron Rapoport. We're going to have him back, in the coming weeks, I would imagine, to get a sense of what's going on. That's not exactly the most cheery dispatch that we've heard, but it's it's a horrible situation. And all right, we're going to take a break, head into the fun half of the program. Number 646-257-3920. We're going to endeavor to take your phone calls.
Gonna be some Brett Weinstein.
We're gonna bring in some Brett Weinstein just because we need to laugh.
Think of how a real big brain looks at this conflict.
Exactly. Speaking of a laugh, Jim Jordan lost by how many this time?
He didn't crack 200, so it was 23 no votes. 3 votes were added to his no total.
Now, it's unclear whether he wants to see if he can get that number up into the 30s, where he loses this vote. But Jim Jordan, as of now, will not be Speaker of the House. I guess they're going to go in and caucus with each other. I think he had 1 less vote than he did last time, was it? Or 2? I don't know. And they're going to go in and caucus, and they could end up doing the McHenry thing on a 15-day leash, where he gets to be acting Speaker of the House with limited powers and just keep renewing him, which would be, great from the Democrats' perspective. Remember, like, the Republicans look at the House, it's really just for the most part, it is a campaign sort of vehicle. They can't pass legislation. They can pass legislation in the House, but they can't enact legislation. But they want to set markers for themselves. They want to show the American public, this is what you'll get if you elect us. And I mean, does Trade Sports still take bets on who will take the House? Does that still happen? Does Trade Sports even exist anymore?
You'd ask Emma.
I think there's some type of gambling. We need to ask Emma. She's not here today. But I'm sure there's a place where you can place a bet on that. Betting for the House at this point, not a bad bet. This has been really astonishing.
Looks like a BetMGM, Odds Checker, BetUS predicted. You can place
predict
some
it.
bets.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Anyways, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the free half of commercials, but you get the fun half, and you support the show. Particularly at times like these, we have a tendency for some people to say, I can't listen to your show anymore. I can't support your show anymore. That's all well and good. I understand. Emotions run very high in this situation. And, none of, and certainly, particularly on this topic of Israel, my relationship to that country and my thinking towards it has evolved, largely because of actions that have taken place over the past 20, 25 years. I don't know, maybe even arguably 40 years. But even in terms of its, my understanding of its founding has changed as I've become more read into the history. And so, someone called me an anti-Zionist the other day, which I had never really considered myself. I rarely give myself a label on any of this stuff, any politics. But certainly I think my perspective, and I say this as somebody who, when Janine and I were on Air America in the early aughts, I don't know that there was a more critical voice about Israel on mass media than she and I, and particularly even on the Air America. I've told the story that we had the Israeli embassy contact the show because they wanted to push back on what we were saying. And I think we did have a debate, if you will, with the ambassador. I think he came in studio, a guy named Pincus, if I remember correctly. I should remember that because I had some relatives with that last name too. But to the point where some of the biggest Israel critics online wanted to know whether they thought that I got fired from Air America in one of the multiple times I got fired from Air America because of my stance on Israel, which I don't think was the case. I think it was a broad array of things.
Perhaps it was Alan Pincus. He was the consul general of Israel in New York City from 2000 to 2004.
It was him.
Yeah.
That's who it was. And send me a link to that because I'll see the picture. But that makes sense. And but it's hard. I understand. I understand. There's a lot of deep emotions, and but nevertheless, we try to provide. I don't know if balance is the right word, because I don't know really what that means in this context. But we try and bring the people who are thinking and reporting on these things and doing so in a transparent way. But again, your support helps us to continue this type of coverage. And also, if it's, you don't like it, you don't have to listen.
Hope to have you back one day.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Somebody just said that. I don't know why I got distracted by that. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. Get 10% off. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, just said to me that they randomly had gotten Just Coffee. Didn't know that.
David Dayan.
Oh, yeah, it was Dayan.
He wasn't sure what kind, though, because he doesn't drink coffee.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you should. I don't know if he wanted that public.
Whoops.
We'll have to cut that out. But Dayan said he got Just Coffee. And I'm like, did you get the majority report blend? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, what? Come on. What's happening on ESVN, Bradley?
Monday, we did a week 6 recap of the NFL, as well as broke down some of the MLB action now that we're on to the National and American League Championship Series. And we will be back tomorrow to give our picks for the Week 7 NFL action and discuss some more of the playoff baseball as well. YouTube.com/ESPN show to catch up or to check out some clips of some segments as well.
Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Yeah, last night, David and I talked to 2 nurses from New Brunswick. Was it Robert Wood Hospital?
Robert Wood Johnson.
Robert Wood Johnson Hospital. They were on their 75th day of striking for safe staffing. Floors that need 9 nurses, sometimes getting 3. Scandalous that nurses need to put up with this in this country, in my opinion. Talked about their demands and the importance of safe staffing, and that's our thing. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning, where we get into Dave Rubin dealing with Tucker Carlson not taking Nikki Haley to task about saying we should go to war with Iran. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
We bring back DJ Denner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them.
Oh. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives
matter?
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma out for the day, blessedly. We'll get to your calls shortly and some clips. Read some IMs. Owen from Los Angeles. My grandfather passed away yesterday on a trip.